Dr. Una, welcome to the Lean Out podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. It is a pleasure. I was reading about you and I know about you through mutual friends and acquaintances, and I was excited to learn that you had training in pediatrics and started your own private practice, and you have been on this mission to bring entrepreneurship and normalize entrepreneurship for doctors. And there are so many other things I want to get into, but first, can you introduce yourself for the audience and people that aren't familiar with you and tell us how your work-life balance is different than other people in your profession?
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Una, as you've said. I'm a pediatrician. I've had my private practice for almost 15 years at this point. And this phase of my career, I really spend in a company I founded called EntreMD, where I help doctors build profitable businesses so they have the freedom to live life and practice medicine on their terms. I do that through a bunch of things. I do, workshops, I do podcasts, I do books and, programs for physicians. So, but that's what I spend most of my time doing on a mission to help 100,000 physicians, right? So we can rewrite the culture for the physician community. But as far as how work-life balance looks differently for me, I'm at a place where I can say I have total freedom, like I'm living life the way I want to live it. And so I wanted to do clinical medicine for 10 years. That was my plan the second I graduated from residency, because I remember seeing my first patient. I walked in, I was a big boss now, saw them, wrote their prescriptions, sent them on their way. And I came out of the room feeling like I should feel like I've arrived, but it was very anticlimactic. That was the feeling. I started questioning, I was like, wait, why? Why am I feeling like this? Is it feeling exciting? And I realized I had constantly been chasing new visions, things I wanted to accomplish and all of that. And it's like I became an attending and I came to a screeching halt. Like, you've arrived, there's nothing else to do. And I'm like, I'm in my 30s. There cannot be nothing else to do. Like, am I going to do what I just did till I'm 70 and then call it quits? Like, no. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? I think everybody just needs to honor who they are. And so I started planning my exit. I was like, I'm going to be here for 10 years. I'm going to give everything I got and I'm going to be done because I feel like there's so many other things that I want to do with my life. And so now I'm in a space where I run multiple companies, but they're all mission led, right? So it doesn't mean they're nonprofits, they're profitable companies, but I see problems that I want to solve. And I'm like, okay, let's go solve this with the business. I get to homeschool my 4 kids, which is something I really wanted to do. So I've created the time to do that. And I've really leaned into things like, delegation, automation, building solid teams, doing the highest level work. So really, I I have full freedom, and for want of a better way to describe it. And I'm grateful for that. And I think every physician deserves that, especially because we give up over a decade of our lives. We go multiple six figures in debt to earn the right to help people. And we want to help people, and that's noble and right. But we shouldn't have to give up our lives and give up our families to do that, you know?
Yes. And I want to acknowledge that something you pointed out when you got to that place where you were a brand new attending and you're like, is this it? Is this all there is? About 90% of my clients have that same complaint where they're like, okay, I'm done jumping through the hoops. Well, how else am I going to get fulfillment? This isn't really quite as fulfilling in all the ways that I expected. And so that is a very normal feeling. And the way that you dealt with it was to kind of put a timeline on, I'm going to focus on this clinical and then I'm going to do some of the other things that I love. So tell me how you figured out that what you really wanted to do was work on this entrepreneurship type of a path.
I am so glad you asked this question because it's not clear at all. I had no idea. I didn't I didn't know what physicians did other than being in the exam room. I would literally Google physician entrepreneurs because I'm like, where are these people? Like, where are they? What do they do? And all I didn't know. Facebook at the time was very primitive, right? There were no Facebook groups. There were no even red alerts to show you have something you haven't read. That's how primitive it was. So I couldn't find a physician community on there. I just knew that this can't be all. And I'm saying that to honor somebody who it feels like they're confused. You're not really confused. Like, start by honoring, okay, there has to be more. At least I can start searching, right? And so I want to give you a little bit of a timeline. In the beginning, it's like there must be more. I didn't know anything. I had never heard of a physician consultant. I had never heard of a physician coach. I had never heard of any of these things. And for private practice, that was definitely out of my league. So I didn't, you know how you go to a bank and you don't really think people own banks? You just know they're there. That's the way private practices were for me. It didn't really occur to me that people own them, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so, and so the first thing I did, was honoring, like, I'm gonna give it 10 years. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but it's gonna be something. And then my boss, I'd signed a 1-year contract for my first job. And he's like, 9 months in, he's like, okay, here's a 5-year contract. I've really enjoyed working with you. And to put it in context, I'd been married for 3 years, I'd been a resident for 3 years. So my definition of eternity was 3 years. I was like, okay, I'm never going to sign a 5-year contract, but I need to move. So I'm not going to be here anyway. And then he says to me, well, you should start your own practice. I'm like, have you lost your mind? Like, nobody starts a private practice a year out of residency. And in case you missed this ginormous bump here, I'm pregnant. Like, this is not the time. And he said, no, I mean, the practice is not going to need you as much in the beginning, the baby would. And then, the practice will need you more and the baby will need you less. It's actually the perfect time. And if you have questions, ask me. And I will say ignorance is bliss, okay? Because I thought I'll hang the shingle and they will come and I'll live happily ever after. And so I said yes to the first invitation, right? Because that's what it is, invitations. I said yes to that. Started the practice. It was School of Hard Knocks. Oh my goodness. I got in there. I hung the shingle. They didn't come. I was like, wait, I need to market. I need to build a referral base. I'm a professional. We don't do things like this, right? But I was already in it. So I had to start learning those things. I'm an introvert. So the last thing I wanted to do was be out there talking to people, but I learned all of those things. And then the practice, became profitable and all of those things. Then there was another invitation. Like, this is really your job. Do you want to build a team? So that, the practice you're doing things through people. And then came this whole thing, and people will be your greatest blessing and your greatest pain. Like, that's the way it works. And so started building this team so I could have some days off, and the practice is running, and it was wonderful. I mean, by 2016, I had a doc who was working, she only wanted to work a day a week. So I had a long weekend every weekend. It was just magical. And I could
Mm.
have settled there. And there was another invitation. How about you build a business asset? How about you build a practice that can work even if you're not in the building? Like, if you walked away and you were gone for years, it would still thrive. So that started like years long process, right? Building the team, building the management team, getting a practice administrator on board, test stressing the system, like go away for 2 weeks, see if everything falls apart. What are the gaps? All of that. And then we got it to where it was working. Like, I only went in 1 day a week. And some weeks I'll take the week off. If you can imagine that. And it was working and it stayed profitable and all of that. Then there was another invitation. You understand the dream business and the dream life. How about you help other physicians do that? I was like, how can I help other physicians do that? I don't have an MBA. I have done one business. I'm an introvert. I don't like talking. I don't have experience. I don't have the connections, blah, 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 blah. But again, it was an invitation. It was another knock. Are you going to take that? And then I said yes to that. And that became EntreMD. Initially, it was one-on-one coaching. Another invitation, want to start a podcast? Another invitation, want to write a book? Another invitation, want to start a business school? I'm like, business school? Have you lost your mind? Right? And so I say that so for someone who doesn't feel like they have it together, it's not about having it together. It's about making this decision that I am going to, there's a masterpiece life that you're walking around with. Like, I'm gonna honor that. I'm gonna keep saying yes until I get there. And I may not know step 100, but I know step 1 to 5. I'll take those 5. And when I take those 5, 6 through 10 will become clear. And when I take 6 through 10, the next level will become clear. So I didn't have it. I don't even really know where I'm going. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I know I'm going somewhere great. I only know steps ahead of me. I'll do that and we'll go where it takes us.
I love how you're framing these opportunities and signs as invitations. So in your mind, where are the invitations coming from?
Well, I think people will interpret it very differently. I'm a Christian, so I'm a God girl. So I will say it comes from him because he gives me a whole plan of, like, he has a whole plan for my life, and I can choose to keep saying yes as we go. But the truth of the matter is, we walk around with that. Like when you talk to most people, you will find that there's been something that's been nagging at them forever, and it's not going to go away. That is a pointer that that's something you probably want to lean into. So for me, for example, even as a kid, I would always look at somebody and say, oh, but if you could do one, two, three, your life could be so much better as a kid. As a kid, so I find myself advising adults, and I would tell myself, like, "This is ridiculous. You should shut up and listen to them." Right? Like, but every time I see someone, I'm like, "Oh, but if you did this, your life could be better. If you did that, your life could be better." And what am I doing at EntreMD? Is the same thing, right? Like if you take this step and that step, you do this mindset shift here, add this strategy, like literally you can multiply how much you take home, you can multiply your time off, and all that is the exact same thing. Right. So people feel these nudges, start a practice or nudges help this kind of people. And it's been there for years and it's not going away. Chances are it's not a figment of your imagination. Like explore it, you know? Yeah.
Okay, so wherever they're coming from, basically, what I'm hearing is to listen to those nudges and listen to your intuition and what are the messages that are being given to you? So the other question I have is, and I know that you teach this a lot in the EntreMD Business School, but where did you figure out how to shift your mindset from those limiting beliefs that you talked about of like, I can't start a practice, I can't market, I'm a professional, to being able to open your mind to being a business person and to being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so there are a number of things, but I think for me, the most powerful, I'll start with that, is examples, right? Examples, because once you see it, you can't really unsee it. So, oh,
Mhm.
people don't start private practices, but then you meet somebody who did, and you're like, if they could, I might could. You know what I'm saying? When so it was things like that that created that shift for me. I'll give you a bunch of examples. So for instance, I'll travel in time a little bit. This was when I had this idea. Why don't I take my company to a million in revenue? This is for EntreMD, and I could not figure out how to do it. I could not work the math. I was like, this. I can't even. I don't even know if I can do it. Whatever. And I go for an event, and here's this lady who's at least 7 years younger than me, has a 4-month-old baby. And she says, hey, somebody, she raises her hand to ask a question. So this is not the event. This is not a speaker. This is someone who raised her hand to ask a question. She said, we started a business and we had someone approach us to buy us out at 9 figures. And then we said, you know what, maybe we'll just wait it out and work at this company for a few more years because we're already making an easy million a month.
Whoa.
So I was like, okay, hang on. I'm thinking a million a year is impossible. And here's this person saying, we're making a million a month, and not just a million, an easy million a month. And immediately rewired my brain to go like, okay, hang on. If she can do an easy million a month, I can do some kind of million in a year. Do you see what I mean? Like examples are so powerful. I was at an event recently and this was a Q&A. So this was a keynote speaker, but it was a Q&A. And somebody asked her about how to choose a tax strategist. And so she's answering that question and she says, but you have to work with them, right? Like you have to let them know ahead of time what you want, what you're doing, acquisitions and all of that. She's like, for example, last year I bought a bank and I didn't tell my tax strategist until after the transaction. And I lean back, I'm like, you bought a bank. Do you see what I'm saying? Like just being around people who are further along, who are where you're trying
Mhm.
to go, it has such a damaging impact on limiting beliefs, such a damaging impact. And so that is part of the reason why I'm so big on building community. I'm so big on telling stories. I'm so big on grabbing my clients to tell stories because when you see it, you can't unsee it. You know what I mean? You just can't. The other thing is really stopping to take inventory of what I'm thinking. Because the mind is very sneaky. So my thing, I say the undisciplined mind is an idiot, just to put in perspective how crazy it can be. And just to stop, because sometimes you set a goal, I'm gonna have my first year where I make $250,000 in revenue. But the thought that is running in your mind most of the time is I can never make above 100,000 as a physician entrepreneur. And so it doesn't matter what strategies you apply, it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to hit it, right? Like, so I start paying attention to those and challenging them. And I adopt this mindset of there's no imagination police. If I can imagine not making $250,000, then I can imagine making $250,000. I just flip it. But the most powerful for me is people, is examples of what is possible. Yeah.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And when I am talking to coaching clients about questioning their beliefs, a lot of times one of the prompts I use is, what evidence do you have that goes against this? And there is always someone. There's an example of someone who's doing the thing that you say that you can't do, just like you're describing. And one of the places you mentioned was a conference, communities, so online communities. What are other places that people can get these kind of inspirational examples?
Yeah, books are really good ones. I read a lot of books because in the stories of the author, you 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 see you hear their beliefs that directly counter your beliefs. You know what I mean? Like so books are really powerful. Podcasts are really powerful, especially the ones that have a lot of interviews. Um um like where people are sharing their stories and things like that. So I lean into those as well. And really you can look at people who are further along and just insert yourself in their world. And like, let me give a little bit of strategy around that. So, um, say like I see somebody, I'm like, man, like I love the way they think. I love the results they've created, all of this stuff. I want to be in this person's world. Well, when the more successful someone is, the more they're surrounded by takers and they're around very few givers, right? And
Mm.
I'm sure you've experienced that. And so you can differentiate yourself very easily by becoming a giver. So if the person has a podcast, you listen to it, you send them a DM. I listened to this podcast episode, absolutely mind blowing. This is what I did with it and stuff like that, and leave it at that. No ask is necessary. You notice that maybe the person is doing an event or doing whatever, and you promote their stuff on your page and say, hey, this person, I follow them, I listen to the podcast, they're amazing. Go check them out, tag them, right? And again, that's you giving. And if you will do that consistently, the door will be open for you guys to have a relationship. Like that's just the way it works, right? People love being around givers. And so there are people you're like, man, then you just open the door. There's a way to do that, and then really, like you talk about your clients, we must not always expect that it will be in an unpaid position, right? Someone who comes to work with you, then they get to work with someone who's directly challenging their limiting beliefs, right? Same with anybody who comes to work with us. And so the containers for the mindset shifts exist. And the more intentional the interaction is, like, if someone's working with you or someone's working in our program, the more intentional that is, the more rapid the transformation, right? It's not random. Yeah.
Yeah, those are really great points. You talked before in the beginning of this interview about the idea that you're moving step by step and steps 1 through 5, but you don't know step 50. How have you learned to deal with the uncertainty of entrepreneurship and of not knowing all of those steps all the way out? Because that's a common complaint and worry of people.
Yeah, I think some of it is our training, right? We have all the algorithms and everything that we could trace it to the end. But business is more like an art than a science, right? And so
Mm.
there is no end. And so for me, the way I deal with it is I play fully in the phase that I'm in. I don't spend any time in phase one trying to figure out phase 10. Like I just don't, because the truth of the matter is, 6 years ago when we started EntreMD, if somebody told me we would be where we are now, I couldn't have conceptualized. I wouldn't have even been able to understand what they were telling me. You know what I mean? It was because I had 4 one-on-one clients. How do you relate that to multiple best-selling books, top 1% podcast, being on the Inc. 5000 list 2 years in a row? I didn't even know what an Inc. 5000 list was, right? Like, so the truth of the matter is, if somebody showed you the final destination, it wouldn't make sense to you. You don't even have the capacity to understand it, right? So that's why I'm okay with not knowing it. But I also understand that whatever I'm going to be, the seed form is where I am now, right? So for instance, there was a time my main focus was become a doctor. And the focus was become a pediatrician. And the focus was become, like an employed physician. Well, being an employed physician set me up to have my own practice. Now, running my own practice and this, when I was in it, being in it set me up to be uniquely equipped to help people who are physicians building businesses because I know all the emotions, I know all the fears. I know where we hide. I know where all the introverts are going to run and hide. And I'm like, I know what you're about to do. Let me just help you get out of it. So being fully in that phase didn't mean I was losing out on EntreMD. I was building EntreMD, even though I was in my practice and I didn't know EntreMD would exist because I was playing fully in the phase that I was in. And so now I'm in the phase I'm in, and I'm going full speed ahead. Like, let's help these 100,000 physicians. Let's shift the narrative for the physician community, all of that. I know that this is the seed for something else. So if I focus on this phase fully, I'm not at a disadvantage because every skill, experience, expertise, connection that I build here is what will set me up to thrive in the next phase that I'm going to. So I have developed the ability to be very comfortable and certain in uncertainty.
Mhm.
Like, I'm cool with it, very cool with it. But I understand the seed principle, right? Like, my job is whatever phase I find myself in, deploy to the fullest of my ability. And I'm glad you asked this because this is a trap that many entrepreneurs fall into. I think marathoners put it this way: run the mile you're in. Just run the mile you're in.
Yeah, that's a good analogy as well, and I love the idea of playing fully in the phase that you're in, and it goes to something that I discuss with people all the time, which is that there are seasons. There are seasons for things. This really gets to a lot of practice of mindfulness to me too. What is your personal practice of mindfulness to be able to stay in the present moment or in the phase?
I don't allow myself live in fantasy land, like, at all. I'm in the moment. I set a lot of very big goals, but I also set weekly goals, right? Like, that's great. But for this week, this is what we're going to do. And I think that helps me stay on the straight and narrow. And to be honest with you, a lot of times when we don't stay in the lane we're in, it's because we're avoiding the work that's required. Like, that's
Mhm.
the truth, right? Like, why are we
Yeah.
going over there? Because it got hard here, and we think the grass is greener on the other side. And so, in the EntreMD Business School, we call it eating frogs. We borrow that from Brian Tracy. And that's just that concept of doing those 20% activities you don't want to do, like you're most likely to procrastinate on, but they move the needle the most. And so this habit of every day I'm eating frogs, like, I embrace it. I brace for impact and just eat them, do the difficult things that are required because that's how you graduate from the phase. So yeah, those are some of the things that I do. A lot of it is around discipline. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me the hardest part about your work-life balance. There are trade-offs in everything that we do. So what would you say is the most difficult part about what you're doing right now?
I think the most difficult part about balancing for me is I love what I do.
Mhm.
So I
Okay.
could work all day, every day and not feel bad. I love what I do. Strategy is my jam. Exploring the mind and picking out, like, limiting beliefs. That's my jam. Thinking about, wow, how can I help someone get a result faster, better, easier? I can do that for days. In fact, I could have a day off and say, you know what, I'm going to just enjoy today. And that means I'm going to pull out a dry erase board and brainstorm, right? So it's a problem for me because I like it so much. And so what I end up needing to do is I need to schedule my balance.
Mm.
For instance, when I talk about, my daily five, so the things I do for my morning routine, one of the things there is Meet Week, meaningful time with kids. And so I would say, why do you have to schedule that? That should be your default setting as a mother. But I love what I do. So I literally put it there to remind myself, these people are your priority and they rank above your business. And so part of your morning routine, you're going to spend time with them, right? Before I start work, I have to do my morning routine. So all the things that are important to me, I take care of those. I schedule hard stops. As an entrepreneur, I mean, when you work a job, it's like 9 to 5 and you go away. When you're an entrepreneur, you can work 9 to 5 and then 5 to 9 and then, keep it moving and stuff. And so I have to schedule hard stops. So sometimes I'll tell my kids like, oh, at 5, we're going to go XYZ place. And I put that on purpose to give myself a hard stop. Right. Like, so with balance, I've had to do, I've had to do a lot of tricks with that. Especially because I like what I do. So it makes it more challenging if I'm not intentional to be in true balance.
That is a very good point, and I think that this is a problem for everyone because I know it's a problem for me too, and I'm the, like, quintessential anti-hustle entrepreneur. I call myself that, and I was just talking to my husband about this the other day. I said, "You know, this summer, we have got to go to the lake. We're 15 minutes from this beautiful lake. We need to spend more time at the lake. I wanna do stand-up. Instead of going a couple times in the summer, like, I wanna go, like, every week." He's like, "Okay, well, so let's make it so it's not on the weekend when everybody else is there because we can go any day of the week that we want." So he said, so make it be Monday. And then he's like, but you have to stop scheduling podcast interviews on Monday. You have to stop editing and like endless content creation on Monday because I know you and that's what you do on Mondays. And so, yes, you have to intentionally schedule these things, even if they are important, they should be important. It's so easy to get distracted nowadays, and so I think that's a very good point, and it shows that we all have this problem.
We all do. And I think, it's fine for us to like you're alluding to schedule what is important to us without feeling, oh, but I should do this naturally because I know it's important to me, right? Like we could take away that stigma. It's okay to schedule times with your kids. My husband and I, we have a date night every Tuesday. It's scheduled, right? Because if it's not, we're both type A. It's not going to, we both love what we do. It's not going to get done, right? I scheduled prayer time. I scheduled time for meditation. I scheduled time for lunch with friends. Like I intentionally put all these things in place. Otherwise, we just get overrun, So we shouldn't feel bad about that.
So since you mentioned your kids, I have to ask from a standpoint of someone who also homeschools, how do you as a busy physician entrepreneur figure out how to homeschool 4 children? What kind of resources are you using?
Oh, so first of all, I'm so glad you homeschool. I didn't know that,
I have one, it's a little easier.
but it's plenty.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a little bit of a background, right? So if someone is exploring, they see that there's so many options. When I first started homeschooling, I had 2 kids at the time. They had late birthdays. And I had some lady from church take care of them, babysit them, but she homeschooled her kids. And so she's teaching them all of these things. And so they're 4 years old doing kindergarten stuff and all of that. But when I try to put them in school, they're like, not only like they can't start kindergarten early, right? Because they had late birthdays, so they have to wait a whole year. Like, what am I going to do? Shut down their brains?
Yeah.
And so I started homeschooling. At that time, I was still seeing patients 4 to 5 days a week. And so the way it happened is I get back from work. I'm like, so you can work from 6 to 8 and you can play all of tomorrow. How about that? And so they sit down and do schoolwork for 2 hours, and the rest of the day, they just play the whole day while I'm at work. And so that's the way we did it. We homeschooled in the evenings, but this was like first grade and kindergarten. So that was easy. And then after that, I found a school, like a lady who ran a school. She probably had 30 kids and all in it. And it was like a hybrid. And so they would go to school for 2 days and they get homework for 3 days. So for me, it felt good because I was like, okay, somebody would be responsible for the curriculum, make sure they get their grades and all of those things. So we did that for a few years. And then after that, I put them in private school and they did that for a few years. But this is where the change came. I looked at my older two. So that this time I had 4 kids. I looked at my older two. I said, I had one of the best educations in the world. I'm a whole physician. But I still came out and there are many things about life I didn't know. I didn't know anything about business, didn't know anything about personal finance, didn't know about leadership, didn't know about any of that. And so I said, if they go to school and keep getting these A's and graduate, they're going to be in the same boat I was in. And so I said, I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to pull them out and give them what I consider full education. So they'll get their academics, but they're also going to get faith. They're going to get business. They're going to get leadership, and they're going to get character development. That's what we're going to do. This was about 3 years ago. Best thing ever, like absolute best thing ever. And so they have an online school. The academics, I don't bother too much with. They have an online school that they go to. So they get their grades, they get their curriculum, they get everything. But I have my own curriculum for them for business, for leadership. for faith, for character development, and it's been absolutely great. Now they're 16, 15, 11, and 9. So those are the ages. But they're rocking it. I love it.
I love it that you do this. My one daughter is 9, so she's the age of your youngest, and so I have to look forward to the teen years, and things do get more complicated, I know that with the work that they're doing, but I plan on doing like you, doing an online program that you then supplement with your own stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought this up for the audience too, and didn't just ask you about this offline, is because if someone is thinking about doing something alternative or they want a lifestyle that is a counterculture professional lifestyle where they travel a lot or do something that it needs more flexibility. There are ways to have your kids do school without doing the traditional way. And I love that you pointed out that in the beginning, when they were younger, it was a short period of time because people think that school has to look like 8 to 2 or 8 to 3 or whatever. And it really doesn't. It doesn't look that way for us. We school all year round. We school almost every day because we also work like on Saturdays and Sundays and we take travel days off, like a Tuesday or something because we have to go to town instead of like, a Saturday or a Sunday. So the kids get used to it. And the other thing I want to point out is that you're being the example that you were talking about for someone to have that mindset shift.
Yeah. And I want to say this because I forgot to mention it. When I did the experiment, I pulled the older two out of school and tried it for a year. I was like, "Ooh, this is good." Then I pulled the younger two, but I run 5 companies, right? So what I did was I mapped out the vision of what I want for it, what I want, the books I want them to read, the experiences I want them to have, and all of that. And I hired an administrator, right?
Ooh.
And the administrator's job is to execute my vision. You see what I mean? Because I'm not gonna be with them 24/7, like their school time and stuff like that. So 9 to 12, they do their academics, and the rest of the time, they have a personal development book they read once a week. They're gonna start working on a book project. They read through the Bible once a year. They have, like, all kinds of fun stuff. And with the older two, when I go on business trips, sometimes they will let them in the room. And so I take them with me again because of these examples, right? So when I heard about the lady who said I bought a bank, I saw my daughter's eyes just go dim. She's 16. Dim. And she's like, I want a bank. Right. And I'm like, I never thought that thought at 16. This is fantastic. And so we do stuff like that. And it sounds thinking about it, it sounds oh so complicated. Just start from where you are. Like, what is one skill you have that you want them to learn? Start from there. And then it just keeps expanding. It's an invitation. Just say yes to it.
Yeah, keep it simple in the beginning and take imperfect action and just start.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Dr. Una, this has been a pleasure, and I want to know if you have any last advice for any of the listeners who are feeling like they have wanted to branch out into business, but feel burned out, overwhelmed, and stuck on the treadmill of achievement.
I'm a very positive person, but let me just play this out this way. No one is coming to save us. Nobody's coming to make it better. That's why I started with a disclaimer. I understand being overwhelmed. I understand being burned out. I understand you feeling you don't have it in you, like you're done. But the truth of the matter is, it's a phase. That's what it is. It's a phase. When we started our practice, which was the first business, I had 2 children under 2. We had just started a church too. And I had to self-fund because I hadn't been in the United States long enough, right, to have a credit history that mattered. So I had to self-fund. So I was working 20-hour weeks in the urgent care for us to have income coming while we were building the practice. It was crazy. There were times I worked 21 days straight. It was insane. But the mindset I had was, if it's just a phase, if I can go through this and pull this practice off, then I can get my life back. I can get my time back. I can get my finances back. I can have a business that works without me. And so I went from somebody who was working 21 days straight to the person who has the freedom to homeschool 4 kids, who has the freedom to run 5 businesses, who has the freedom to take 4 vacations a year. So I'm saying that, so if you feel overwhelmed, I'm letting you know it's a phase. Just decide, I'm going to do what is required so I never, ever get back here. Yeah.
I love that advice. And we all know how to do hard things or we wouldn't be where we are. And so looking at it as this is a phase, kind of like the rotation in medical school that you hated, and you were like, I just got to get through it. What can I do to get through it and then get out on the other side? Yeah. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Una, where can people find you if they want to connect with you or learn more about you?
Yeah, so if you're already on a podcast platform listening to this, then just search for EntreMD. That's ENTREMD, and we talk shop all day, every day. We have almost 500 episodes there, and so you can subscribe and then make that part of what you put in front of you, right, to get rid of the limiting beliefs because you're seeing all these examples of what is possible. And then, if you're like, yeah, and I want to figure out how to work with the team, entremd.com/call would be the way to go. And my team will be happy to walk you through the different ways we support physicians.
Great. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for all you do for physicians. All hands are needed on deck. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.